You're welcome. Okay, we are live on Facebook, and I give it back to you, Hannah.
Thank you. And we are recording, right, Kim? Excellent.
I see the light. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to get started in just a couple of moments. If you take a look at your screens, we have provided instructions for how to change your screen name so that we know who is in the virtual Zoom room. And if you need to log into the language line for Spanish interpretation, there is also a slide there, and we will give verbal instructions as well. We're going to get started in just a few moments.
No sé cómo poner mi nombre.
Ahorita la van a cambiar, Isabel. Hola, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Bien, bien. Gracias.
Isabel, I think we just changed your screen name, so thank you.
Sí.
Air District team, if you're ready, we are ready. All right, good evening. Hello and welcome to the AB 617 South Central Fresno Community Steering Committee meeting. I'm going to ask everyone to put themselves on mute so that we can have very little background noise. There's a lot of you on the line today, and we're so excited to see you. My name is Erica Manuel. I'm the CEO of the Institute for Local Government, or ILG. The ILG team has been working with the Air District and the community to facilitate this steering committee for the past year, and it's always good to see you every month. I am joined today by my colleagues Hannah Stelmakovich and Kim Danko, who will be working behind the scenes to manage the logistics of this virtual Zoom meeting. They should be either waving their hands or showing a reaction on their screens so that you can see who they are. And they are always available to help you with any technical difficulties you might have through this meeting. Before we go too far, I want to make sure that our Spanish-speaking attendees have everything they need to hear, understand, and participate in this meeting. So I'm going to check in with Ana or Mari at the Air District to see if we can share instructions in Spanish.
Buenas tardes. Si me están escuchando en español y necesitan la interpretación en español, ahorita lo que están viendo en la pantalla es cómo poder cambiar el idioma para que lo puedan escuchar en español. Lo que va a decir es que va a buscar el control donde dice, tiene el globo, interpretación, y allí va a ponerle el idioma español y luego silenciar el audio original que viene diciendo Mute Original Audio para que no oiga los dos idiomas de inglés y español. Si tienen alguna pregunta, lo pueden hacer en este momento. O si también gustan participar por teléfono en español, también aquí tenemos el número de teléfono que viene siendo el 888-431-3632 y el código de acceso es el 809-7028 y luego el signo del número. Eso es solamente si lo necesitan en español. si no pueden entrar a través de Zoom. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? Nada. Ok, gracias.
Great, it sounds like we're all set. So thank you for that, Mari. So I'd like to go over the agenda for today's meeting. You should see the agenda on your screens right now. We're going to begin with standing updates. The district and some of its partners are going to share subcommittee updates and air monitoring results. And then we'll have a discussion with Tree Fresno about how to move forward with vegetative barriers and urban greening measures. And then Ivanka Saunders, our community co-host, will talk about vegetative barriers as part of Fresno's regional planning efforts. And then we'll review and discuss the first draft of the district's annual report. And then we're going to wrap up the meeting with some updates from CARB, I think, about next week's CARB board meeting. And then before we adjourn, we'll answer any committee questions about the stipends, which we talked about kicking off at the last month's meeting. We have moved that program forward and we'll be available to answer questions you have about that program. And today's agenda items, like every month, we do try and develop in partnership with the community co-host and with other CSC members. And we just want to thank those people for all the suggestions, really helping us prioritize the topics that you want to discuss at these committee meetings. I think one of the things that's special about AB 617 is that it's a community-led process, and your input really does help make that process work. And we hope that this process is working for you. So now that we've talked about the agenda and we have a few more people on the line, let's go through the Zoom controls and the virtual meeting etiquette. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Kim, for Zoom instructions. And we have done this before, but it's always great to reiterate because we do have public members that maybe are joining in for the first time. Kim, can you please walk us through those instructions?
Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks, Erica. As Erica stated, this is not our first Zoom meeting, so most of you should be familiar. But in case there are any members of the public or people who are joining us for the first time, we're just going to review. Please make sure that your screen name includes your first name and your last name and your affiliation. So we know who's on the line today. You might see it changing from time to time, and that's probably me. I'm a stickler about the naming. So please denote if you're a CSC member, either resident or EJ member, business, please let us know. We have the district and CARB employees on the line as well, so please denote your organization. If you're a member of the public and you're sitting in, please put a P after your name. If you're on the phone or unable to change your name, I'm happy to do that. I know Erica and Hannah are happy to do that as well, so just go ahead and chat us and we're happy to help you out. Please stay on mute unless you are speaking or have any questions. If you do, please raise your blue hand and then we will call on you verbally. And also please feel free to use the chat box. We love to see the communication in there. You can make comments, ask questions. It is not completely private, so we will see what you're talking about. So just make sure to keep it respectful and kind to one another. But other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to chat us at any time tonight.
Thank you, Kim. Kim and Hannah will be available to help you throughout the meeting as needed. And there are just a couple more housekeeping notes. As you can see, if you're seeing the screen in full view, this meeting is being recorded and it is being streamed live on Facebook. It's a meeting that's open to the public, but we do ask that the members of the public, if you could, please reserve your comments until the end of the meeting to allow our CSC members enough time to deliberate. But we do promise to check for public input a few times during the meeting, and we'll also have a formal public comment period at the end of the meeting for those of you that are listening in or that are on Facebook. We will specify that with a slide on the screen, and we'll be able to review and take your comments then. If you're just joining us, there is a translation option for our Spanish-speaking community, but if you are on 2 devices and you merge those devices, you may have a challenge with your translation. So we want to make sure you know that. We are committed to making sure that this is an inclusive process. So if our Spanish-speaking members have any issues with either translation or anything throughout the meeting, just raise your blue hand or unmute yourself at any time and let us know, and we will stand by to troubleshoot any issues that arise during the meeting. All right, so let's go to roll call. We no longer need to do a full verbal roll call during this meeting, but please make sure that you actively rename yourself, as Kim mentioned, so that we can track your attendance and your participation in the attendance log. Please make sure that your screen name clearly says your first name and your last name and an organization. And this renaming process, as we discussed last month, is really important for the residents that are going to be eligible for our stipend program. And as I mentioned, I will answer any questions about that program at the end of the meeting. And those of you that are participating in the stipend program, just a quick reminder that you should try to be present at this meeting for at least 75% of the meeting, and we can track that by your Zoom login time. So if you, last housekeeping note, sometimes we have people that go into a meeting and listen to this Zoom recording and in a group together. And if you are a part of a group today and more than one person is listening in and you'd like to be tracked as a resident with multiple people on the same line, just raise your hand or let us know and we'll rename you with all of your names so that we can make sure to track you all. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kim really quickly to make sure that those of you that have not renamed yourself or maybe that have phone numbers and don't know how, that we track you appropriately now. Kim, can you let me know if there's anybody on the line that we want to check on at this time?
Sorry, I'm muting. I wanted to make sure that David's iPhone is David Meeker. Is that right?
That's correct, Kim.
Okay, great. I will rename you. Let's see. This CMAC TV is labeled. It might be related to somebody. It's doesn't have the video function, so it might be somebody's audio. And that's it.
Can you say that again?
The CMAC TV label.
CMAC TV, if you have a special.
They are recording, they record and put it on, they're the Community Media Access Collaborative. They record our meetings and put them on the kind of community access television station.
Well, perfect. Everyone else is accounted for.
Thank you. All right. I want to pass the controls over to our community co-host for the month. Is Ivanka on the line? Would you like to give a couple minutes welcome to our community steering committee?
Hello, everyone. This is Ivanka Saunders. I am a policy coordinator with Leadership Council, and I also am a resident in Southwest Fresno 617 area. And I've been involved with 617 actually since it was in its paper written stage, so for a little while. And I'm glad everyone has made it on tonight. I hope everyone is faring well with everything that's going on in our world right now. So good evening to everyone.
Thank you for being a co-host today, Ivanka. And as always, I like to pass it over to our host at the Air District to just say a couple words and give you guys a quick update. Ryan, did you want to say anything to the committee?
I'll be even briefer than Ivanka. I just want to say thanks to everybody for being here tonight. We have a jam-packed agenda, so I won't take too much of anybody's time. And also want to thank Ivanka for agreeing to co-host this meeting and to share with us tonight. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you both, and thank you all. As Ryan said, we do have a packed agenda, and time is really of the essence. So we want to give you enough time to hear what you need to hear, say what you need to say, provide feedback on what you need to provide feedback on. In the agenda, there are times marked for what each item will take in terms of time. Sometimes we move around in there, but we always try to end on time, and we will do that again today. The first thing that we have on our agenda today is standing updates. And today's updates are really going to focus on subcommittees. We're going to start with truck rerouting, and then we're going to go to school filtration and buses, and then we'll cover some community air monitoring. And then we're also going to get an update on the air quality that we've all been experiencing lately because of the fires that are burning up and down the valley. So we want to start with truck rerouting. And I don't see, there's a lot of you on the line. Is anyone from the city of Fresno here today? If so, be prepared to unmute yourselves, and we'd love to get an update from you. But if you recall, at the last meeting, we talked about the RFP related to the truck rerouting committee and the RFP that the city of Fresno is diligently working on. And we talked about wanting to focus the subcommittee on reviewing and providing input on that RFP as soon as it's ready. We're in that window, but I don't know if that's done yet, and I want to give the city a chance to provide input, or if not the city, then the Air District will give an update on truck rerouting.
Scott is here.
Great. Good evening. It's wonderful to see everyone.
Scott Mosier. I serve as Public Works Director for the City of Fresno, and pleased to share. So we've had the subcommittee meet, had some initial input in the city. We have a draft of the request for proposals. It's very thorough. It's actually with me for just a final review. And then the intent is to provide that to the truck rerouting subcommittee that we'd convene together, go through that in detail. There are, I'm sure there will be lots of good questions and discussion. Some good feedback will come from the subcommittee. We'll finalize that RFP, and then that would be could be ready for issuance. Also, I'm pleased to share that the City of Fresno's soft match toward that we committed early on, those funds are still secure and ready to go. So, and I'm available for any questions that steering committee may have.
Thanks, Scott. Does anyone have any questions about the RFP, the process, the status? You can raise your blue hand or unmute yourself. It looks like we don't have any blue hands yet, but if you'd like to unmute yourself, please do. And our Spanish speakers will take questions from you as well if you'd like.
Is everyone connected, or is our little difficulties we had over? Like, I was just looking at the chat and we had a few people that were still having problems. Are we good?
I think we're good in Spanish. It looked like someone else was having a bad connection and they were calling in, but it looks like everybody seems to be okay. Mari, are you getting that note as well? Yeah, we're okay.
It looks like everybody's okay, yes.
Thank
I did
you.
want to say one thing about that, the subcommittee is that it's nice to see so many people on the phone tonight. And even if there's those that maybe have not signed up to be on the subcommittee, I just want it to be known that it's still free for people to join. It's just, we know that sometimes digging into the individual measures might be harder for everyone to stay up with all the time. But if you are available, then still please join and give your input.
That is a really good point. And I think the Air District does send out those subcommittee notices, I believe, to the entire committee. And if your schedule allows, it'd be fantastic to have that participation. Seeing no additional questions, we will move on to the next item. Thank you. And always, as you think of things, feel free to drop them into the chat. And I think our Air District friends and our City of Fresno friends may be able to answer those questions directly in the chat if you think of something after we've moved on.
When is the next meeting?
Oh, sorry about that.
Subcommittee, truck subcommittee meeting.
It's my understanding that it's not scheduled yet, but I will go to the Air District to see or Scott, if you have talked about potential dates. I think we were waiting until the RFP was ready. So.
Okay, correct. I just know one was canceled, but I didn't hear anymore.
So once we do get the RFP, we will send it out to, like they said, to the subcommittee. If anybody is interested in joining the subcommittee, please email. Heather would probably be a good person, or so you can email Heather Heinks at valleyair.org to join that, and then we'll add you to that distribution list. And then what we'll do is we'll coordinate with the City of Fresno on possible times. Usually they give us several times that work out, and then we'll send that out to the subcommittee to get input onto what time works the best for the most people.
And then Scott, one clarifying question based on our conversation last month. You mentioned that the committee would have around 30 days at least to review the RFP. Are you still on track with the schedule that you mentioned last month?
Yes, that is the plan, and because we want to provide enough time for meaningful feedback and dialogue with the subcommittee. We appreciate everyone serving in that area.
Is it going to be possible to give feedback even if we are not in the subcommittee?
Everybody is always eligible to provide comments. Yes, Naomi.
Great. Any more questions about this item? Hearing none, we will move on. Next, Jamie is going to discuss the school filtration and bus subcommittee, and then we're going to move into some of the other categories on the committees. Jamie?
Good evening. We have been working with CARB and a couple of discussions. Hats off to Brian, who's really taken this on, Brian Moore with CARB. And we continue to work for, with CARB to find a way that we can be flexible with this program and really meet the needs of the different schools. One of the good things, it does sound like the HVAC assessment that all schools need to do in order to become, it's like to see what they need, in order to see what they need and see about, where and what kind of filters they can take, that should be able to be covered under the grant program so that schools won't have to pay out of pocket for that. We've got a couple companies, Keith is one, that have said that they can provide MERV filters at the levels that we need them to be in the same kind of HVAC piece of equipment where a MERV 8 filter may have been working before. So we're investigating that as well. We're also looking at Butte County, Imperial County, both of their air districts, and then speaking with the South Coast AQMD about how they're running their programs. I know some of those programs are run by a third-party company and called IQ Air. So we're investigating that and seeing if that's something that would work here or how it might work. So we continue to be in kind of a data gathering phase on that. With regard to the school buses, we've reached out to one of the we've reached out to several of the trustees, but I've heard back from one of them, Elizabeth Jonathan. She is happy to meet with us. We're just going to coordinate with her to find a couple of times that will work. And once that happens, we'll open that up to the committee, and any committee members who kind of want to jump on that meeting with Elizabeth Jonathan, we'll make sure that that's available to anyone who's interested. And if you might recall, that's to get the school buses up and running at Fresno Unified, the electric school buses. So we are moving forward and hope to have some additional meetings here, hopefully before our October steering committee meeting.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Jamie about this item?
Yeah.
If you do, feel free to raise. Go ahead. Hi, Naomi.
Hi. So a question is, so you said that you guys confirmed that Elizabeth is available or willing to meet. When we suggested, several board members were included, not only her. So I wonder if you guys also try to approach the other Genoveva, Islas, and Cáceres. I forgot her first name. Anyhow, the thing is that it might be just better to meet with the three instead of one by one. And then the second, let me just say one more comment. That was a question. The comment is, I know that Team Tyner with CCAC has done extensive research on the filtration programs or projects that were implemented in Southern California with that particular company that you mentioned, and they were extremely expensive. So I just warn that we don't go like blindsided to follow that model if it's going to cost us an arm and a leg.
Yeah, we agree with how expensive IQ Air is, and we're hoping to not follow that model, but it is a model, and we keep getting told how wonderful it is by folks outside of the Valley. So we don't want to 100% dismiss it, but we have heard that folks in the Valley have been very skeptical of the way in which they have used these funds. Also, so I have sent emails to those other trustees, but I don't even know if they got through. One of the reasons that I was able to get a hold of Elizabeth, I know her personally and I have her cell phone number. If folks have personal connections, if they could let me know and I could use them to reach out to them, that would be fantastic.
Genoveva Islas, her office is next to our office, CCAC and CCJ, and she just moved in, so we see her on a very regular basis.
And I mean, what I'll do is, as I'm coordinating with Elizabeth, I'll share what my back and forth with Elizabeth with you. And then if you can share that with her, that would be great. My cell phone number and my email will be on that, and she can reach out to me specifically. If anyone else has contacts, Eric, I'll put you on that as a little CC on my my contacts with Elizabeth as well, and any forwarding on that you can do, or giving me information about the best way to contact people would be great.
Thank you. I see Ivanka has a hand raised.
Yeah, I do. I have one comment to make. I was just looking at Mari Velasquez also made a comment that maybe can be translated for everyone.
No, I'm interpreting whatever the comments are, what they're stating. That way it's both English and Spanish. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to, when we were talking, Naomi was just talking about finances. One thing that I would like to see if the district could provide to the steering committee is a list of possible funds specific to the air filtration. We know we're working with limited funds, and the deeper we investigate the cost of HVAC systems versus just air filters, we know we don't have enough funding of that just for the initial measures amount that was allotted. But if it's actually possible to give or find out how much of the funding, like that there's mitigation that goes into other funds into the schools, or where did the funding that, like high-speed rail for coming through our city, there's mitigation funds that were going. So it would be interesting to find out what other funds you guys are available that the committee could actually see and say, yeah, we would like to see those tagged towards some of these costs that are going into the air filters. I think that there's other funds out there, whether it's, we don't really know when the air district is collecting permit fees from applications or the high-speed rail mitigation funds. There's different funding buckets that I would think the steering committee would like to know about, that those funds could actually be applied to stack on top of the measures of the funding for our 617.
No, that's a good point, Ivanka, and I think it's something that's definitely worthwhile to look into. What are possible additional means to bring, outside of the CAP funding? What other opportunities are out there to bring additional funds to help pay for some of these? So yeah, I think we can have more of a conversation. I think internally at the district, we can look at some things that may be available. I encourage a lot of times the steering committee members sometimes know certain things, and if it means forwarding it on to us and you want us to explore it because limited time or resources, please do so. And we're happy to explore those further as well.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm seeing a question from Tim Tyner. Tim, did you still have a question?
I do. It'll be really quick for Jamie. I may have misunderstood, Jamie. Did you say that there was someone locally, a local vendor, who said that they could provide MERV 14 filters that could be changed out for the MERV 8s without having a negative impact on the airflow?
So we have heard that there's manufacturers, and IQ Air being one of them, although in working with IQ Air, it's all smoke and mirrors, it's all proprietary. They won't even give us like a true assessment of what they're going to do until we kind of come to the table with some money, which is we're very skeptical of, as I know you are as well. But there are a couple of manufacturers that are claiming that you can just take a MERV 14, a MERV 16, and put it where your old MERV 8 was. We actually have put one on our building to see if it's working. I will tell you it's a weird size, and we were looking at it today, and it's been up for 14 days, and it's as black can be. So I think what that means is that, yeah, it's working, it's doing a better job, but we're also gonna have to, and I wanna say it was like a $70 filter, it was super expensive. But it means that instead of it being something that gets replaced every 3 months or 6 months, something that we were having a discussion about whether to replace it today because it was so dirty. Mind you, hopefully this isn't a very, very unusual air quality situation we have. But if there is someone local that is a certified HVAC professional, and anyone is familiar with someone who has dealt in this arena before, we'd love to talk to them. I've been calling manufacturers up and down. We've had our HVAC guys working on this as well, just to get a better lay of the land. And unfortunately, from what we're understanding, IQ Air is the only folks doing this in a, kind of in this setting on the West Coast. And then the 1 or 2 other air districts that we're familiar with that are not using IQ Air, they're doing with their handful of schools entire HVAC system replacements.
Right. I have the same understanding. I had a call with CARB today to ask them sort of the same question. Are there any manufacturers that produce MERV 14 filters? We know they're available. We know you can change out of MERV 8. But if you had an older HVAC that doesn't have the capacity to push enough air through these filters because they have a very high static pressure, so they reduce the airflow, that's the issue we're having. The new schools in Fresno Unified, they could probably change out to MERV 14 right now. It's the older ones that we're concerned about, where the schools have told us those systems just can't do it. So I'm really hoping if there is a manufacturer other than IQ Air, that CARB will come back and tell us who that is so we can start, looking at those filters. The other thing I found though is that there are a handful who make them, but they only make a few sizes of filters because they're not focused on schools. They're just, they're very, very specific as far as what they're manufacturing them for. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry to take up too much time. I was just curious about the comment you made regarding that.
Yeah, and Tim, we will continue to keep this committee in the loop because I think as many folks who are learning more about this as we can have, the better.
Thanks, Jamie. There is a question in the chat about whether all the schools at least have HVAC systems and if any have swamp coolers. I don't know if that's an answer that you have on the fly, but if not, if someone can answer that in the chat, that'd be great.
I'm told that all the schools within the community steering committee do have air conditioning units. Now that's not to say there might be schools outside the community that have air conditioning units that have swamp coolers, but in the surveying we've done of Shafter and South Fresno, they all have HVAC systems.
Thank you. Any questions from our Spanish line before we move to the next item?
No comments or questions on the phone line.
I think that's a no, thank you. All right, Jamie, you're on a roll. Do you want to talk to us about some of the air quality challenges and just kind of what the Valley's been experiencing over the last couple of weeks with John?
Right, and we'll just take a couple minutes. The only reason we're bringing this up is because we know, one, we've been bombarding you with emails, and two, this is a very unique situation. So John Klassen is going to show you a couple images, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the unprecedented smoke impacts that we're seeing along the western United States.
All right, thanks, Jamie, and good evening, everybody. Good to see you all on here, and I'll be pretty brief with this. I know a lot of you have probably been tracking this over the past few weeks, but just wanted to make a few points to you all tonight. The wildfire season that we are seeing so far in 2020 really is unprecedented in the state of California. So far, we've burned about 3.3 million acres across the state. The previous record was just below 2 million acres. That was in 2018. So we've already shattered that record, and we are still in the middle of wildfire season. We will probably have a couple more months of this. So it's just very shocking how many acres are burning. I think the number of acres that have burned so far is larger than some states on the East Coast from what's been reported. So I wanted to share my screen here just for a moment, show you a few things here. You may have seen some of these images here, but this kind of gives a view of all the fires happening across California. And this is pretty abnormal where we have fires across the entire state all at the same time. Usually during a wildfire season, we would have a few fires in the Sierra Nevada, and maybe one down in Southern California. And so if the wind direction was favorable, it would push smoke away from the San Joaquin Valley. But when we're surrounded by fires to the north, south, east, and west of us, no matter what's happening with the meteorology, smoke continues to come into the valley. And so this is a situation that doesn't happen all the time. Just wanted to point out too, we're also breaking records for the largest size of individual fires. The August complex is now nearly 800,000 acres. The previous record was like half of that, so we've almost doubled what the previous record was for the Mendocino complex in 2018. And in fact, 5 of the top 20 largest wildfires of all time in California have now happened in 2020. And we're still going, we're still right in the middle of the fire season. So this season has been record breaking for a number of reasons. I wanted to show a quick satellite image of what was happening Monday. Monday was a very bad smoke impact day for the San Joaquin Valley. This is a smoke plume coming off of the SQF complex and the Creek fire. You can see that smoke plume going right over the central part of the San Joaquin Valley. This is going right through Fresno, Clovis, right through Madera, and we saw very, very high concentrations in those areas, a lot of ashfall. This was on Monday, and this was a really bad day, and you can see the massive amount of emissions coming off of this fire on this day. Last thing I wanted to share here was just an idea of what's been happening with our air quality through this period since the middle of August through now over this month period. You can see when we got to the middle to the end of August, when these fires first started from the lightning storm that came over the state in the middle of August, you saw concentrations across the valley increase rapidly, where our concentrations were well above the 1997 federal standard of 65 micrograms. That's that green line you see there in the middle. And it's very rare for us to exceed that number, even during the winter time, when our normal time is to have our peak PM 2.5 concentrations. We rarely go over that in the winter time. Here in the summer, when we normally have lower concentrations, we were double that, almost triple that on some of these days. And you can see going forward in time as we've gotten into these past few days, again, these numbers have ramped way up as emissions off of the SQF and Creek fires have really increased concentrations on the valley floor, where we've had a number of very unhealthy air quality index days for PM 2.5 in different areas of the valley because of what's been going on. And just real quick, and I'll give it to Jamie in a moment, but just the outlooks so far over the coming days, there is a trough that is supposed to be coming through, and that's a good thing, where it's going to give us some better dispersion in the next couple of days. It may push some of the smoke off to the east out of the valley, but some of these changes could also bring smoke from the coastal fires in Northern California back down into the valley. So it's a situation where changing weather can help with pushing smoke out from some fires, but then bring smoke back in from other fires in the state. But we're hoping to have some reprieve here over the next couple of days to be a little bit better. But there is no projected upcoming big storm and rainstorm to really help settle down these fires. So we're expecting these smoky conditions to continue for some time, unfortunately. So I'll hand it to Jamie to say a bit about what we've been doing for public outreach.
Unfortunately is right. And these are really some historic conditions. So we have been focused on getting the word out through as many different mediums as possible. And I want to thank many of you. We've seen you retweeting and reposting the things we put on social media. I think Lilia even took one of our posts and took it upon herself to translate it into Spanish and repost it. I think that's actually what gets me kind of excited about this process and about this community and about the work that you all are doing is, you know, it means one thing when it comes from us, but it means something totally different when it comes from people who are actually in the community. So I want to thank all of you for that. We've really focused on any possible way we can get the word out. We've done press conferences, we've done joint press conferences with public health directors. We've done tons of interviews, local interviews, statewide interviews, national interviews. We're doing tons of social media, everything that in press releases, all of that we're putting out, we're doing bilingually, and we're sharing those with your team. So I really appreciate that. We've been struggling to keep our app up and running. Needless to say, we've seen a huge increase in use over the last week or so, and Samir has called Ryan and I into his office multiple times and has said, what the heck, we need to get this up and running. And we are working to make sure, and I'm not going to tell you it's fixed, because every time we say it's fixed, like 4 hours later it goes down, but we are working really hard. We're also communicating that AirNow, while not being quite as precise, is a backup tool for folks, and we do have that on our website now. We have a web page, and we're also beginning to share just some more what I call kind of comfortable information for folks. That's things like the difference between the COVID masks that people are wearing, and if you can get your hands on an N95. If you're working outside, you really need to be talking to your employer. If your employer won't talk to you, you need to be calling OSHA about their regulation with regard to being required to wear N95s. We're telling people to change out their filter. We're sharing with folks the DIY fans that folks are using. That's taking a filter and basically taping it to a box fan. We should say DIY filters, homemade filters that folks are using. I will tell you that it is getting difficult to find a filter or a box fan, but I have heard that there are still some to be found in places, odd little places like Tractor Supply and Fresno Ag Hardware and those type of places. So we are definitely continuing the communication, continue to have open dialogue. And again, I just really thank all of you for helping us carry the message, but it is a unique situation, and there's no real upside to it. So John and I are happy to answer any questions.
You got a question for
I
you?
see a hand from Nyameen. Nyameen's had her hand up for a bit. Nyameen?
Yeah, so.
And then we'll go to Brian.
Well, congratulations. Definitely, I've seen a big difference in more outreach and more education in Spanish primarily. But I do have one suggestion and then one question about the air monitors. So Jamie, as you were saying, definitely the N95s are required to be provided by the employer, like for agricultural workers when AQI is above 150. The big question that I have, because I've been talking to farm workers and they do not provide them with these masks, either because the employers don't know. And, you know, obviously right now air quality has been so bad that you don't even need an app to know that it's above 150. But most cases, especially now that it's going to get cleaner, you know, how can you really know what the air quality is? And most contractors and foremen and, you know, people that work in the field don't know how to read that. So my recommendation is to partner, the air district partner with the ag commissioners, because the ag commissioners receive the N95 masks from the state. And they're providing those to the employers, to the growers, to the contractors. So if you are able to provide one little, you know, business card looking like, you know, way of, you know, this is where you go to see where the AQI, that will be so important for the employers to know how to access this information about the AQI. And, you know, definitely you can provide those information to organizations like mine, because we're seeing farm workers on a regular basis and we're giving masks. So, but I think it could be a targeted way of outreaching to this population. And my question is, if someone, because I heard someone asking me this, if someone that lives near the Roosevelt High School wants to see the readings of the PM 2.5 monitor that was installed by PM 2.5, where would they go to see that? Because it's not in the RAN, or is it where you have all your information?
It is not in RAN. If you go to the AB 617 website, actually, let me just do this real quick because I actually have it up for something else. So, can you guys see my screen? South Central Fresno. This is our page. at the Community Steering Committee's page. If you go to air monitoring and you click on that, you can see all the monitors. So then you click on Roosevelt High and you can see where it is, level 5.
So this information for people that don't know about 617 do not have access to this, because it's, I think the RAND program, generally speaking, is so much more known.
Public. Yeah, I was
public. So
right.
Is there a way to connect them yet, or is someone working on that?
Our eventual goal is to be able to connect all of this to RAND, but I'll just be honest, you know, I've been joking that our app and RAND, we're just trying to keep it going through the smoke. There's lots of enhancements that we do plan to make. This is one, but right now keeping it up and running as it is our number one priority.
So I would request one more outreach material. For us who are aware of AB 617, if we can have some information so we can tell our fellow community members where they can find these air monitors in your website, that would be great.
Thanks, Naomi. Brian, did you have an extra comment?
Oh yeah, just real briefly, I wanted to mention about the box filter idea, kind of the DIY, doing your own filter. We actually had a study that had nothing to do with this, where we had indoor and outdoor measurements going on at some houses, and we tried the box filter thing and it really worked. But I just wanted to preface that maybe if you make one, watch it for a while, because you are creating some resistance to that fan. It's not being used the way it was designed. I would hate to see like fires, you know, if it's left unattended and things like that. So just be cautious. If you do make them, they work, but you might want to watch it the first couple hours you run it, and leaving it while you're asleep. Just make sure, you know, your smoke alarms work and all that. I would just hate to see unintended consequences from using them, but they do work great. And there is a way, maybe I'll send it to the group or through the air district, to use 5 filters and make kind of a box around the fan that seems to really reduce the extra stress put on the motor of these fans. So I think they're awesome ideas, but just kind of be aware of that.
Thanks for that, Brian. And I think Genevieve asked you to share that research if possible. And if you could put a link to that in the chat, we'd appreciate it. Or if there's any additional insights, you can drop into the chat. There are a lot of questions or comments on this item, so we're going to keep going. We're a little over time on the other items, but I think this is of interest. And we're going to go in this order: Lisa, Ed, Bill, and David, and then Tim. Let's start with Lisa.
Okay, hi. First off, I want to say I was a smart person and got my filters back in June, and I have enough to see me through the rest of the year. I think you guys need to do sort of like an infomercial about the air quality and about the risks of 2.5, maybe with the local weathermen or weatherwomen, weather people on the news, and also talk about filters and why filters are important. And also too, is there any talk about, you know, the cheapy PM 2.5 filters that you can actually put in masks? They don't make them to be N95s, but they do stop some of the particulate matter. And also too, just to let you know that I'm not using your RAN system. I'm using Purple Air, the Weather Channel, and AccuWeather. So just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Those are great ideas. And we know that, we know that there are several other ways to get air quality information out there. And it's been so bad that if anyone's looking at any tool out there to get air quality information, they're getting the general gist of what's going on, and that is a positive.
Well, one of the things that I just found, actually, as I'm looking at it, and the numbers were 443, and me being a high-risk heart patient that could actually die because of this weather, you know, I was looking at, I don't have an escape plan if it goes up to 600 or past 550, and at what point do I evacuate basically out of California and go to a different state? And, you know, that's the sort of information somebody like me would need ahead of time to think about, maybe not so much this year, but the upcoming years, because this is not a one-time event. So thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. So I do want to recognize a couple people that have answered questions in the chat. Thank you for dropping your question in the chat and answering them. And Mari, thank you for translating all the questions and comments into Spanish. Ed Ward, quick comment or question?
Well, just, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just a comment. My company's been dealing with Cal OSHA requirements, and they are pretty clear. The employer is required to provide N95 quality masks. One of the things that we ran into some significant trouble on is most agencies are trying to hold the N95 masks off for emergency workers. We purchased some KN99 masks, which are Chinese knockoffs of the N99. And I will say that I went to an OSHA website and they decertified some of the KN95. So if you can get KN95 masks fairly easily, but make sure that you get the ones that haven't been decertified by NIOSH to be used in the field. And the only other piece of that Cal OSHA requirement, it says that the employer is required to provide N95 equivalent filtration, but the employees are can choose to use it or not use it. And that's been interesting because we have almost 400 staff from Eureka all the way to Bakersfield. So we're in the middle of the major fires no matter where we go. And it's interesting to see where it really gets bad, and Lisa's comments very valid. They really do need to use the masks. I mean, I get pushed from Rand, Porterville, Visalia, Bakersfield, Eureka, Reading, where we have facilities, and it's very helpful to know what's going on. And Bakersfield and particularly Porterville have had some really bad days. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Before we go to Bill, I want to check with our Spanish language line, see if there's any questions on that line before we go to Bill and David and then Tim.
No comments nor question in our Spanish line.
Thanks, Denise. All right, Bill, you're up.
I was just curious if there's any chance that maybe we could encourage logging to come back and get some responsible forest cleanup. So maybe next year we might avoid these fires. You know, I'm from a time where there used to be logging and responsible logging, where when they would go in there and they would select trees and they'd clear out all the brush and get rid of it. And, you know, they would, you know, cut roads to get in and access the logs where they serve as fire breaks in these situations. They make access where if you do have a fire, that the Cal Fire, whoever, could much easier get to where the fire is rather than just let it burn this whole state. You know, back in when I was pretty young growing up, well, my dad would tell me, like, and you can look it up, it's true. The Indians used to every year burn a certain amount of the brush and so forth, and it would make their basket weaving supplies and everything grow much better. And we didn't have this buildup. It seems that since we have let the forest just grow to where it's overgrown, we have a few dry years and these trees are weakened. We have 150 million or whatever it is dead trees. And then when there is an opportunity to go in and log them out, the environmentalists, they want them cut down and left where they lay. So when we get these fires, it's just like what it is now. It is totally devastating. And a lot of this could be avoided, in my opinion. And it just really upsets me because I'm old enough to know how it was when we had fires before. I've worked on a lot of these fires, fueling the equipment and whatnot. They were never this bad, never like they are now. And it just breaks my heart to see these fires going on the way they are with nobody's fault other than not proper forest management. And I don't want to hear anything about, climate change, because the climate change doesn't stop at the Canada border, where they're having the least amount of fires this year than they've ever had. So that's a whole different problem. We've got two problems here. We got no forest management, and then we have the climate change. But when these fires, the fires go like that, it does nothing for to help the climate change and to help what we're all trying to do here, which is preserve the air so we can breathe it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment, Bill. I know there are a lot of conversations happening around the state related to vegetation management, specifically in the wildland-urban interface. And I know that that's an issue a lot of people are passionate about. Thank you for sharing that. David Meeker.
Yes, I guess my comments are similar to Bill's. You know, I'm representing the industry here. We're trying to be a great industry partner in the South Central area and manage our business and comply with the regulations that have been requested by the district. It is frustrating to see the lack of management and accountability on the federal level. So I'm hoping the district can work back through CARB and there can be some improvements done, because, you know, there's not near the pollutants generated in a state in a year that we're seeing, you know, daily or monthly even right now. So it's very frustrating, and everybody just kind of like, well, we got to deal with it. So it can be prevented. I lived in a time when it wasn't this bad as well.
Thank you, David. Last comment, Tim, and then we're going to go to Chai as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'll be really quick. I just have a follow-up to a couple of the earlier comments. So in regard to box fans, the new box fans today have safety fuse plugs, so the fire risk is much lower than if you have an older fan. And if you use the filter, make sure you put it behind the fan. I have seen some people putting the filters in front and trying to push the air through the fan, and that's going to create more of a risk. Second is Lisa's comment about Purple Air, using that as a resource. So Purple Air has the best saturation or the best geography of monitors, but the data is always going to overpredict what's really in the air. And there are two websites that use the same monitors as Purple Air, so you can see monitors all over the valley, but they've calibrated the data so it's much closer to what the air district's monitors are reading. One of those is run by EPA. The website is fire.airnow.gov. And again, it shows all the Purple Air monitors, but they've calibrated the data to be closer to the regulatory monitors. The second website is sjvair.com. And that one similarly does calibrations using the local air monitor data from the air district, calibrating it to the Purple Air so that you see the same sites as Purple Air, but the data is much more accurate. So I would highly recommend people using either one of those sites. I think it gives you the best picture of local air quality. And I've seen on it that just within Fresno, from the east to the west side of Fresno, it can be very different because of the way the smoke is moving around. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Please do feel free to put those links in the chat as well so we can keep it for the record. Really appreciate that. I'm going to move to Chai. You're going to give a quick update on community air monitoring results, and then we definitely want to have a very quick conversation about elementary school monitoring sites. So we're going to keep moving, and then for our Tree Fresno presenters, thank you for your patience. We're going to get to you hopefully a little after 6:30.
All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody here, and I hope you are all doing well. I'll try to make this as brief as possible since I know we're very tight on time at this point. So just a quick overview of what's going on as far as our equipment deployment. We're working with Central Unified in installing equipment at Madison Elementary, and there's some pretty good progress with it right now. We've got approval by the cabinet to take the contract out to the board for review on September 22nd, the idea of the project there, and then we're hoping that to take this to their board for approval on October 13th. So we're excited to get that moving forward. And also we're continuing to work with Fresno Unified on installing equipment at Edison High School. This is actually the last location left for Fresno Unified. All the other locations, we've already deployed equipment there. So it'll be great to get all these completed. And we've also used a van to respond to community concerns. Just this morning, we had the van monitor near the Amazon local delivery center, just north of Cedar and Church Avenues. So once we get that data all downloaded and ready and put together, we can give everybody an update on that. In addition to that, we also had a van monitoring done nearby Belmont and Palm Avenue in response to a community resident there who had concern about air pollution concern in that neighborhood. She was smelling odors, and this was actually brought to our attention by Lisa Flores, a steering committee member here. So we went over there we worked with our resident to identify a good time to monitor over there, and we went over there on August 27th and monitored there. And so we did not detect any BTEX, found very low levels of NO2, 3.9 ppb, maximum of 32 micrograms per cubic meter for PM2.5. And we found that that's pretty consistent with all the nearby air monitors that we have in that area. So it's not like any spike just within that neighborhood. And then also a maximum of 78 parts per billion for ozone. And again, that's also very consistent with all the nearby community monitors within Fresno and regulatory monitors. And so just wanted to let everybody know that the next quarterly report, which is for April to June 2020, we're getting really close to getting that completed. And so we will post that to the air monitoring website fairly soon. And lastly here, we would like to get some feedback from the committee regarding the installation of air monitoring at West Fresno Elementary School. That's about 1 mile northwest of the Orange Center Elementary School that we've been unable to get approval to install air monitoring equipment over there. And we had this discussion in the last steering committee meeting. And so Keith Lowen from Washington Unified has made available this location as a potential site. He's been very open to us in placing the equipment at the school, and it has already received support from his administration. And so it looks like I think Keith is here today as well. So wanted to thank him for his support for that. And we can still work with Orange Center as we move forward with this to get equipment there eventually. But working with West Fresno to get this equipment there would be really good, that since it's within the area anyways, that we can get air monitoring started there as soon as possible, and then we can work on getting it at Orange Center. And so we're just at this point looking for support from the steering committee before moving forward with this. That concludes my update.
So what I'm hearing Chai say is that the West Fresno Elementary site is ready to go. They're excited to move forward. They're not giving up on the Orange Center site, which I know this committee really wanted to focus on. They're just not getting much traction on that location right now. So the plan is, unless we hear otherwise tonight, that they're going to proceed with West Fresno, continue to work on getting something at Orange Center, but really move forward with West Fresno. Am I hearing that accurately, Ty?
That's right.
Excellent. So it sounds like something is better than nothing at this point, and we are hoping that the committee is okay with this dual approach. And if there are any concerns about that, if you could write it in the chat or raise your hand now, and I do see, Lisa, your hand, any other hands that are showing immediate and urgent concern. Otherwise, they're going to try for both tracks so that we can do as much as possible. Seeing no hands yet, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa for her question. And before we move to the next item, I'll make sure that if there are any comments that we note it. Lisa?
Yes, hi. I'm going to make it really quick because my dog is outside in that bad air. In regards to the Belmont Palm area, which basically is an air measuring of producers, it was only 4 hours. And I really would like to see the Air District go back and do a longer study in other areas, just not, what is it, north of him? Yeah, north of the of producers. So I know I talked to him about it before, And I am looking for residents who, you know, will house your equipment and stuff. But what is the likelihood of that being done at this time?
Yeah, I think that's something that we will need feedback from the steering committee regarding if we want to divert the mobile van resources to further do this further study there versus doing the monitoring, continuing monitoring where the steering committee had already had agreed that they wanted us to monitor that. So I think that's.
But this project is, but also too, the committee should also know that this is a project that is going to is wanting to relinquish H Street. It's a big truck movement and truck parking. It's the size of an EIR for 35 acres of change in my community.
So what I'm hearing, I think, is Lisa's concerned about another location. Is there a possibility that that can be brought to the air monitoring subcommittee
yes,
for discussion?
I'm actually looking for residents because we have previously talked, and I am looking for residents instead of north, south, southeast of the facility because of the way the air blows, to also get a reading there as well. Because when they came out to do the measurements, they did it after lunch. They only did it for 4 hours and that's it. It's not even a complete 24-hour cycle.
Thanks for that comment, Lisa. I'm going to have the Air District follow up with you directly, and I think we'll have some additional follow-up in some structure related to the committee. I think your comments duly noted.
Will they take more than 6 months? Because when I put this initial request in, it was in February. Nobody listened. When it was a shutdown, you guys could have got beautiful numbers of everything that was coming out of that factory. And nothing was done till recently. And the comments for the draft EIR was what, Monday? So, you know, when I'm asking for some assistance in getting things for the community, I'm talking within windows of time that the Air District has been negligent in following up. And I'm really tired of having to wait, you know, 2, 3, 6 months to get any sort of action. That's not acceptable. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I think the Air District's going to follow up with you directly on that item and the committee as well. Thank you to Tree Fresno for your patience while we talked about some really important items. Please do continue to put your comments or questions in the chat. We're going to make up some time. I'm still on track to finish by 7:30, but we get to talk about vegetative barriers now. And I think that we have 2 people who are going to discuss some of the items we've already talked about, but we're going to circle back a little bit, and we want to talk about a path forward for vegetative barriers and urban greening measures. And hopefully Mona and Barbara are still on the line with us. We're a little late and we apologize, but if Mona and Barbara are on the line, please unmute yourself and go ahead and present to us about what you have on vegetative barriers.
Okay, this is Mona from Tree Fresno. Can you hear me?
You're good, yes.
Okay, great. And Steve Brown is actually representing Sonoma Technology, and he's on the call as well. But
And Barbara's here too.
Excuse me, Barbara's there? Okay, great. So we've all agreed that I'm going to go through a quick sort of image-based presentation. It will be like less than 8 minutes to give you an idea, to give everybody an idea of what the project is, and then we can ask some quick questions after that. Is that all right?
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So let me get started with the share screen and make sure that we get, I want you to be able to see the presentation. All right, can you see it?
Thumbs up, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so first of all, thank you for giving our nonprofit Tree Fresno the opportunity to update you on our special environmental project in partnership with Sonoma Tech. It's called the Fresno Trees Project. I'm Mona Nyandero Cummings, and I became CEO of Tree Fresno about 1 year ago. Tree Fresno is a community benefit organization committed to transforming the San Joaquin Valley urban landscape with trees, greenways, and beautiful landscapes. The organization began in 1985, and since then we've planted almost 50,000 trees in the Central Valley. In 2016, Sonoma Tech and Tree Fresno came together to begin evaluating how well vegetative barriers using trees and shrubs protect people from exposure to air pollution downwind of major roads. Near road air pollution has emerged as one of the most important air quality issues, especially for roads with substantial truck traffic. That same year, the California Air Resources Board approved our CEP project, which allows community-based projects to be funded from a portion of the penalties received during settlement of enforcement actions. CEPs can improve health, reduce pollution, increase environmental compliance, and bring public awareness to neighborhoods most burdened by environmental harm. The TREES project is a shared responsibility. So one, asking Sonoma Tech, tasking them with the work of measuring air quality in areas with and without near road vegetation. And two, tasking Tree Fresno with the planting of more than 3,000 trees in model vegetation. We expect that this work will serve local, state, and federal agencies in quantifying vegetative barrier benefits. The Fresno Trees project takes place in Fresno County, the county most heavily impacted by environmental justice concerns in the valley, according to Cal EnviroScreen. Obviously, EnviroScreen ranks census tracts in California based on potential exposures to pollutants, adverse environmental conditions, socioeconomic indicators, and the prevalence of certain health conditions. So for the TREES project, Sonoma Tech uses traditional air quality measurement equipment like this to monitor concentrations of black carbon, which serves as a marker for diesel vehicle particulate pollution. Studies show that vegetative barriers can reduce particulate concentration levels downwind of major roads in two ways. One, as air passes through the barrier, the vegetation can filter and remove airborne particles. And two, a dense vegetative barrier can force traffic-related pollution to flow up and over the barrier, lofting the pollution plume higher into the air and giving it time to disperse and become less concentrate as it travels to downwind locations. Caltrans data indicate that in the Fresno area, between 5,000 and 18,000 heavy-duty trucks travel daily on each of state highways 41, 99, 168, and 180, with Highway 99 having the highest daily truck count. Given the scientific understanding of near road problems, we will measure pollution at several locations within 150 meters of Fresno area highways and adjacent to heavily traveled major arterials with higher levels of truck traffic. This is along 99. Urban Fresno can be a tough landscape for plant survival. This is a property on Cedar just off Highway 99, located under the newly constructed high-speed rail line. Thus far, we have planted for our barrier projects large canopy, extremely durable trees, typically evergreen, which can withstand the challenges of drought and minimal landscape maintenance. Examples are Italian stone pine, Mondale pine, camphor, and deodar cedar. During the first quarter of the year, our partnership resulted in the planting of nearly 150 new trees along Highway 99, split between Fowler and Fresno, plus 61 more trees on the campus of Tehipity Middle School in Central Fresno, where Highway 180 and 41 intersect, and that's right here on this slide you can see. I'd like to point out that suitable locations need to be approved by agencies responsible for those properties. For example, in the case of Tehipity Middle School featured here, we worked closely with the Fresno Unified School District to install the trees and irrigation required. Long-term maintenance and care of trees and shrubs is always taken into consideration. And at some point we pass that project on to the partner like Fresno Unified. As mentioned, the Fresno Trees project sites are located near busy roadways where near road pollution contributes to health impacts. We often choose to plant near school sites. Our second vegetative barrier was completed in Fowler at a site which includes 2 ponding basins adjacent to Highway 99. The species selected to prevent noxious pollutants from entering nearby communities was a deodar cedar, a very large evergreen tree with a lifespan of over 100 years, reaching heights of up to 164 feet with a canopy size of 40 feet. This is a photo of the Tree Fresno team that put in those trees and the irrigation. The city of Fowler has been a great partner with Tree Fresno, and they also have worked together with us on a community landscapes plan funded through Fresno COG. And I will say City of Fresno has always also worked with us to develop a West Fresno community landscapes plan. Our third project was completed recently near the convergence of California Street and Highway 99 in Fresno. This work required a partnership with Caltrans as their irrigation systems are really highly mechanized. We planted nearly 50 Mondel pines at this location, a highly drought tolerant species suitable for rugged roadside environments. To complement our work, the Fresno Trees Project is providing outreach, education, and community engagement. We're really excited about a brand new partnership with the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce, which will address climate change impacts, which disproportionately impact disadvantaged communities of color through a comprehensive community-led project. We'll engage youth and community leaders in West Fresno to identify locally led solutions to reducing climate change and air pollution impacts while obtaining immediate economic and public health benefits. So in conclusion, the work related to the building of vegetative barriers is of substantial interest to all major regulatory agencies involved with transportation-related air quality. We are pleased to have been invited to report about the successes we've had in navigating the complicated framework required to plant trees along busy roadways. Please follow our work, treefresno.org, and we are happy to take any questions now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Did Barbara or your other colleague have anything to add before we take questions? Okay. Did anyone have questions?
Great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Did the committee have any questions for Tree Fresno and partners?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if now is the proper time to ask this question because I don't know if it's a typo, but I was reading the AB 617 report backdraft, and on page 10, it says, is this the appropriate time or are we going to get to it tonight?
We're going to get to that report later. So if it's a specific to Tree Fresno question,
yeah,
we can talk about it now, but the actual report discussion is coming up next because it's maybe premature, but what's your question?
The question is, it says in this report back that we're going to spend $680,130 to Tree Fresno, and it says multi-year project aim at evaluating. It doesn't say how many trees they're going to buy. It doesn't talk about installation. Am I perceiving this wrong, or does the report need to be tweaked? That's all.
It's a good question. I think it probably combos both items that we're talking about. I'll hand it to Jamie or to the Tree Fresno team if they have more details, but I know Jamie and Mona might both be able to answer this.
I think that's a tweak to the annual report that we need to make with just some more direction in it.
I kind of like the way it sounds here at Tree Fresno, but no, I'm not familiar with that, so absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. And we will talk about that report actually in the next agenda item after we
yeah,
finish
because it sounded
education,
like we're spending more than $500,000 on consulting for a tree, but not a single dime on a tree.
And that would not be the case. So we actually have no responsibilities to that particular piece that you're reading. So this is a completely separate project, the special environmental project.
I think that, thank you for clarifying that, Mona, because I think it is important for all the steering committee members to understand that this is no way, you know, these projects happen before and is funded through something so completely different than the AB 617. So it's not presented like, oh, we can check the box. We already plant trees. It's not fact.
No, not at all. In fact, I have to say, I've been here about a year and I'm very unfamiliar with that piece of the legislation. So I appreciate the person that brought that up to me.
Thanks. I see hands from Ed and Genevieve, and we'll take Ed first.
Mona, first of all, I want to thank you and celebrate the work that you're doing. It's very valuable to our community. It's also being on the Stockton 8617. It's the same subject. Greenery really does make our communities better, and I thank you for that. Your access for the seedlings on some of these trees, do you have growers that are willing to bring these trees up to a place that where you can plant them? Or how do you develop that?
I love that question, and I'll answer it briefly. Typically, we're buying from local nurseries, and they give us fairly good prices for those trees. We're also starting to grow. This last year, we started out at Scout Island, where there was a nursery developed by CAL FIRE and Tree Fresno a number of years ago. And then here at Fresno State, because we're located on the campus, the Horticulture Center has started a discussion with us about having the students actually start propagating some trees for us to use. It'll take 2 or 3 or 4 years for us to be able to use some of them, but that's exciting for us.
Thank you. That your presentation will be available for the committee also. Thank you, Mona.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Genevieve, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, thanks Mona for your presentation. I'm a little out of the loop in this. I have a few questions. One, is there a subcommittee devoted to this project that's having a more in-depth conversation? And 2, what is the process going to be for identifying locations to put vegetative barriers? Where is the community input going to come from? I see the steering committee as a vital tool for figuring out pollution sources of concern and places that are lacking vegetative barriers. And so I'm just wondering what the process is, because I think that's a really great project and I want to hear the results, but interested in where the steering committee is going to be a part of this moving forward.
Good question. We have just started building actually the vegetative barriers this year. I came in a year ago and there were some the projects that had already been identified with various partners on where might be good to actually put a vegetative barrier. It's actually a very complex process to where we have the potential project site, the location next to a busy roadway that's also adjacent to obviously a community that could be being affected by pollution. So we have Sonoma Tech make sure that this is a location to where if we build a barrier, it's not going to make the conditions actually more dangerous than not having the barrier. So I have learned during this process, and we've chosen the 3 sites that I showed to you. I am interested, this is part of the reason why I'm on this call and we've been in communication, is that we actually do need to create a committee that can feed into ideas of where these barriers can go. They don't go up, we're not building 20 of these a year. In reality, we're building probably 5 or 6 at the most each year, with this year probably only 4. So, and they range from 45 trees to 100 trees. So I will take that in consideration and move forward into creating a committee that can further inform my ability to be able to bring choices to Sonoma Tech, and therefore we can vet projects where the community has had input on where they might be most useful.
Thank you. Mona. I trust your organization and Sonoma Tech's assessment, but I do think that the funding has come from this committee, and so input needs to be used from this committee to determine project locations. And so I would advocate for potentially a subcommittee of this group that's interested to be the ones advising where those go. And I don't want to think our community funds is a.
I think though, there's a little bit of confusion about the funding source. And anybody who has some, you know.
Would
some
you like me to,
Please.
Mona, would you like me to handle that one?
Yes, please.
I'd be happy to. Hi, I'm Barbara Lee. I'm actually kind of new with Sonoma Technology, but I used to work for the state, and before that I ran one of the local air districts. So the program that's funding this project comes from state enforcement actions that result in fines that are paid. And the state has a program that a number of different departments in the state, including the Air Resources Board, allow polluters who have to pay fines to put a portion of that fine money into mitigation projects that benefit the community where the violations occurred. And so this project was selected by the Air Resources Board for funding in 2016 with a fine that was levied against a company at that time when the settlement occurred. And so it isn't directly part of the AB 617 process. I think that what you're hearing from the team, though, is we recognize the potential benefit of urban greening and urban greening as a tool to mitigate air pollution. And so we want to interact with this committee so that we can get your input. And there are constraints we have to work within, but we absolutely are open to collaborating. This is, I believe, the second time that Mona has spoken with you. And I'm new to Sonoma Technology, but I've been participating in the last few steering committee meetings, albeit quietly. We really do want that collaboration to occur. So to the extent that the committee forms a subcommittee on vegetation and wants to give input to us, we're happy to do it that way. But we also are paying attention to the input that's already been provided through the mapping tool that the Air District made available to the committee and allowed folks to go in and put pins in the map where you felt there would be a potentially good greening project. And we're taking that information and we're going to look at it and see if any of those sites meet the criteria we have in the grant that we got from the state to do this work. So hopefully that helps clarify the situation. I know I'm excited about working with the committee and excited to have your input. I know Mona is as well, and Steve is. So I think there's going to be some, potentially fruitful collaboration in the future.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that.
I had just one question for the district, and then I want to end it because I know there's a lot of people who want to participate. I think I'm maybe under the misunderstanding that we've allocated funds through the 617 process for vegetative barriers, and that Tree Fresno was the group that was going to help us implement that. Have we not allocated those funds through our process?
It's my understanding, and I believe we are waiting for CAP funding guidelines regarding how CAP funding can be spent for this type of thing. And we're submitting plans, we're putting them online, we're submitting plans, but it is not a 100% done thing. They are listed in the SERP. That is the
money allocated for tree planting, the vegetative barriers, but we were not, when we developed that strategy, we had not committed that we were going to work with a particular partner. That's what it was to be determined. So I think, just to be clear, that was approved, right?
That's correct. And I will say Tree Fresno is listed as a potential partner. Relief California is listed as a potential partner, and there may be one other there. I did just want to take one quick second to remind everyone and thank the handful of you that actually did put your little trees on our little social pinpoint map. We would love for more folks to add to it, and we will send out that link again.
Thank you, Jamie. So what I'm hearing is that there are two complementary but separate initiatives related to Tree Fresno. They are referenced in the CERT, but they are not, that's not what this specific presentation is about, and that there is an additional opportunity for this community steering committee to participate in kind of engaging on the urban greening effort that's happening, that's funded by a different source of funding. So I think that what I'm hearing is that Mona and Barbara and Steve are going to have a separate committee effort. They're going to maybe reach out to the district and engage around the dates and times of that committee. And then certainly if there is a vegetation type management committee of this group, that those may be complementary efforts. But right now, Tree Fresno is leading sort of something separately, and even the social pinpoint stuff that Jamie just mentioned could tie into that effort. And it does tie into that effort.
And I'll just add one more thing, because this is not the only way that we add trees to the community. So we also have a grant from CAL FIRE where we can add trees in communities which need trees. So we are a resource for you. And this is why I'm receptive to input, is that there could be a pinpoint on that map, or maybe several of them, that are actually not necessarily appropriate for a barrier, but heck, we're going to put trees there if we can figure out a way to do it.
So what I'm hearing from Mona and Barbara is that there are two things you can do immediately. One is drop pins on the map that Jamie is going to send out. And two, join this subcommittee that Mona and Barbara are going to pull together, that the Air District will share information about. And maybe they can even drop information in the chat. Does that sound right?
That sounds good to me. And I'll probably spearhead that, being that I'm right here in Fresno and representing treefresno.org. So please contact me and I'll put the information in the chat.
Thank you so much. Ivanka's had her hand up for quite some time. Thank you for that patience, Ivanka. Did you have a question for the Tree Fresno people?
No, I think a lot of this was just clarified. So thank you, Mona and Barbara. I think as the steering committee, I would just say that our main goal was that we want to make sure that any urban greening measure that we have goes into the 617 area. And I think you guys have just clarified a lot. So thank you.
Thanks, Ivanka. I'm going to pass it back to you in just a second, Ivanka. But before we move off of this item, I want to check our Spanish line and see how our friends in the Spanish line are doing. Are there any questions from our Spanish speakers?
No questions on the Spanish.
Thanks, Denise. Okay. Any additional needs from our friends at Tree Fresno, or any other comments on the committee before I move to Ivanka, who's going to actually give us a little bit more information about this general planning process around urban greening? Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Tree Fresno. And Ivanka, you're up.
Yeah, this is really just a quick reminder, and just to make sure everybody's aware on the committee about making sure the left hand knows what the right hand is doing in the city of Fresno. The city of Fresno currently has planning for the South Central specific plan. Every area of our city has specific districts or plans. And initially this was considered just an industrial triangle area. And we have to recognize that even though our city may want to see this to become the next economic growth area for the city, there's still community and community residents that live there. And so in this planning of this South Central specific plan, the region is covering our 617 area. It's the same landmass. So on one hand, we have our committee sitting here trying to improve air quality, because we know the history of why this area was chosen in the first year of only 10 communities that have been heavily burdened in all of California. Yet on the other side, we have the city trying to make sure that this is the facility industrial growth area, which is the commerce or the industry that can cause some of the biggest pollution to an area. So it really is just, it's yin and yang. It's the opposites working at the same time. And one of the things that's happening right now when we're talking about South Fresno, East Jensen, Central North, that whole area is in the planning and the zoning changes, making sure that they, as this community grows and if it grows economically as an industrial area, that part of being a good neighbor means you can't allow to continue what has already happened at Orange Center, where the back of the playground is up against the Ulta facility, right? So there's no barriers other than a pavement cinder block wall. So we don't want that bad planning to continue. And so we are in the process as a city of what makes a good neighbor next to community that still lives there. And one of the things that we have CARB reference, we have past information letting you know that if you can have a 2,500 setback, so this goes along when we're talking about trees and urban greening and barriers. It's not just about the barriers, it's making sure that there's a setback between somebody's home or sensitive receptor like daycare, any of that, and that there is an actual real physical space, not just trees as the single filter. It's trees and a setback of space that happens. And we want this committee to be aware of that, because otherwise we can be working really hard on all of this that we're doing, but if we're not giving any kind of input to the city, then all our work is kind of in vain in some sense. The other point I wanted to make is we're at this table because we know that these areas carry a lot of different cancer hotspots. So community members that live in South Central specific planned area, almost everybody has had somebody currently fighting cancer or died from cancer. And so we need to not just say, well, that's because you chose to live. No, we need to make sure the city is understanding that we're trying to make sure that there's a planning process that takes place, that takes everything that we're doing into consideration. And so it really does tie into all the work that Tree Fresno is trying to do, but there's a huge planning process that goes on with all the other agencies. So remember, when we've had this measures for the Community Steering Committee that we wanted to see put in that CERP, one of the things we've asked for was a memorandum of understanding, and how are we going to move forward with the other city, county agencies, because we're talking county borders with the city in South Fresno. And we need to make sure that we are aware of, we keep pushing from this direction, making sure we have that open line of communication, but not just we're collaborating or partnering. We need to see it in writing. That's the bottom line. That's how our legal system works. A lot of things can be misconstrued of what's going to happen if we don't have something really laid out. And so while we're working on piece by piece our specific measures, some of the measures that we haven't actually gotten to yet, and this kind of leads to our next step of 6-month report back. We need to look back on the resolution that happened in February, and what were some of those other items that were required by CARB as we move forward, and look back on that. So I just want to, are there any questions from anybody about a specific plan? What happens? There has to be an environmental impact report that is done, but right now the plan has to be completed first before that report can actually start being done. And I just want, if anyone wants to start following this, you can either contact me or just go onto the city page and you're following our planning commission and our city council meetings as well. Any questions? I know that's a lot, but I know I'm looking at the clock too.
Any questions for Ivanka about how that works, how coordination between the city, the county, and other agencies that are all working on issues that impact air quality and other issues tied to it, and health impacts and equity? Any questions for Ivanka? I see Naomi's hand.
Yeah, well, it's not really for Ivanka, it's for the Air District. So what has happened with those MOUs that were part of the resolution that was approved in February, where yes, there was going to be an MOU with the city department that is dealing with the rerouting study, but that was not it. It said that it was going to be all the other departments and programs that had to do with other programs that were related to our SERP strategy. So this is just another example. So where we are with those MOUs.
Yeah, thanks, Naimeen. Thanks, Ivanka. Yeah, we definitely, we've heard the committee. We understand that that definitely is a priority. It's something that is in the resolution, and we're looking to move forward with understanding that we, you know, as we do that, wanting to definitely have the steering committee involved in that. It's going to be very important. We have broached the, you know, had an initial discussion with the city on this. It's going to be a process that, you know, as we go through, we're going to have more communication with the community steering committee on it, and to you know, involve them more in. And so I wish I had more to report back, like on definitives, like you know, it's still in the earlier stages, but understanding how important it is to the committee, it is something that we are actively working on, and we will continue to work on with the committee involved.
Thanks, Ryan. I can tell you, ILG does a lot of work across the state, and this is something that a lot of communities and jurisdictions grapple with. So this community is not alone. It is very difficult, and yeah, it's definitely something that I've heard is an issue across the state, and certainly something that is being addressed. Sometimes it takes a little time. All right, we did have one question in the chat that I think Dahlia asked, and I want to make sure that that gets answered, I think, by a chat. And so any other questions for Ivanka about the planning process, about the coordination process, before we move on to the annual report review? Ivanka, thank you for providing that perspective and a reminder about how best to think about the work that's being done and the work you've already done, and how to make it maximize the impact that you want to make as it relates to AB 617, and really not just working on projects and then having them maybe be negated by other efforts. So I appreciate that comment. Moving forward, we have an annual report review from Jamie, and we are doing okay on time. I want to triple check with our Spanish speakers before we move on to the next item. Is there anybody on the Spanish line with questions?
Nobody in the Spanish line with any comments or questions.
Thanks, Denise. Okay, so next on the agenda is something that Lisa actually teased up for us, and I know it's something that we have talked a lot about over the last few weeks. I think even Ivanka mentioned it a little bit, and if you recall from last month's meeting, the Air District has to submit a written report to CARB a little bit later this year. The report is not due actually right away. It's not due for quite some time, but this committee communicated several times, I think, that you guys really want to be involved in the reporting process. You want to be able to respond to and provide input on the work that you've all been doing, which makes a ton of sense. So the Air District promised to give you that report and give you plenty of time to look at it, give you input before, so you can give input before the report is due. So they're keeping that promise. They've shared a first draft with you. You should have received it via email in English or in the mail if you are a Spanish speaker. It might have come in the mail today if you're a Spanish speaker, but that is okay because we don't even expect you to have read it. Lisa kind of gets a gold star today for having already started to skim through it. But we are going to go through that report, and Jamie's going to give you a download on how to read it, what to think about it, what to say about it, and how to give input on what changes may be made or give your thoughts on how you feel. So Jamie, up to you.
Great. The first thing I want to reiterate is this is a long document, and we know everyone just received it. We have no intention of asking for your feedback tonight, or expecting you to have read it, or expecting you to have absorbed it. We're just introducing it tonight. We're going to take the next several weeks, and at the next meeting, we will be discussing it again. It is just the beginning of a conversation. One of the issues that was mentioned in the resolution from CARB is that we needed to give folks more time, and we needed to make sure that all our documents were being presented in English and Spanish. And so we really tried hard to make sure that we were doing that with this document. This document is a culmination of the work this committee has done over the last 6 months and is part of the annual report that is required for us to submit to CARB in December. We need to have a draft up by the beginning of October, which tonight's posting does meet that criteria. And we do intend for that draft to be updated over the next couple of months based on your input. I want to differentiate this. This is not a report for the CARB meeting next week. Brian Moore, when I get done with my little presentation, is going to discuss in brief the CARB update that they will be giving to their board next week on the 24th. So we're just introducing this tonight. It is not intended for next week's CARB meeting. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. If you go to our website in your South Central Fresno page, you can see the materials for tonight's meeting. You have the agenda, and right under that, we have the South Central Fresno Annual Report. We then have 2 reports, annual report information from CARB, and I'm going to give them just a second to talk about their annual report information. Very briefly, we're short on time, so I'm going to go a little bit fast. Again, this is just an introduction, just giving you a little bit of a lay of the land. It starts with an executive summary, goes into a little of the background of AB 617, and then talks about your community, the Fresno, the South Central Fresno community, including the boundaries and including some data on the community, both with regard to demographics and with regard to health data. We then talk a little bit, I should say, about community engagement and what this steering committee has done over the past, it's a little bit more than a year, but really looking at the past year. We then talk about how we all had to change our lives in March due to COVID, and how I think you all really set the bar pretty high in how you managed to transition to a virtual online platform. We then talk about the stipend program, and again, Erica, I think, is going to give a 1-minute update about that at the very end of the meeting, so I'm not going to stop on that. We go into the community emissions inventory, and the ongoing technical assessment shows some of the things that have already been done. Most of these tools are on the website on your South Central Fresno AB 617 page. We then go into a section about air monitoring. It's several pages about air monitoring, and it echoes a little bit of what Chai already said tonight. We then show what the data behind the air monitoring is starting to show us. Information based on the different monitors, and an example of the weekly update that we provide in both English and Spanish that also gets posted to the website. We then go into compliance and enforcement measures, talking about the different strategies that are in the SERP that are related to enforcement. There's a write-up on each one, and then there's a chart that goes into a little more detail about each of the different strategies. Just telling everyone, the public, CARB, everyone, kind of where we are today, what's been done, and a little bit of that annual report status update. After we talk about enforcement, we talk about the regulatory measures. What regulatory measures are coming up? What toxics reports are coming up? And then, of course, the best available retrofit control technology. Again, this is that really technical part of the AB 617 process that basically tells everybody that they have to have the best technology available for their particular operation. And it gives you a little bit of a plan for when those analyses are happening, when they're coming. We talk a little bit about the technology clearinghouse And then about those community identified sources of concern. These are those big sources that are in South Central Fresno that this committee has talked about on a regular basis. What's being done with these facilities and what the goals are. We then talk, or I should say, we then provide this same information in our chart form so that you can see the table and see where we are, both the measure description and the status. We then talk about land use measures and same type of thing, what kind of land use measures we have, a little bit of a write-up, and then a table that shows you specifically where we are on each of the measures. We then go into the incentive measures. As you know, the incentive measures are the ones that are tied to the funds, the pool of capped funds that is coming from CARB. And we go into detail here with each of the measures, telling where we are on the development of our guidelines, whether or not they've been submitted to CARB, and how that process is progressing. There's a lot of various incentive programs, including, as I get to the end, vegetative barriers. So there we go. Then we talk a little bit about our outreach and mitigation measures. Some of the things that have been done recently, some of the work still need to be done, and how we're addressing each of those outreach measures as they're laid out within the SERP strategies. And then just a last note about the emission reduction targets and the metrics for tracking progress. And basically most of the metrics are above in the charts, and they're also listed in the actual SERP, the metrics for tracking progress. Most of them actually have the metrics right next to them in the SERP. So that's a lot. You do not need to comment, provide input, provide your edits right now. We don't have time, but over the next couple of weeks, we would love it if you can email us, you can give me a call if you want us to walk through certain sections with you. If there's a section that you're really interested in and you want to have a one-on-one, we're happy to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to CARB to talk just a minute about their sections. Actually, I can still share my screen if you want me to show CARB sections.
Oh, yeah, you can if you like, Jamie, if you want to show the enforcement report.
I'm pulling it up.
Cool. I'll go ahead and start with it, and I'll probably hand over to Justin Shields, who works in enforcement. First, I want to just apologize for the formatting. In CARB's Infinite Wisdom, we have a new font, and not every computer has that font. So when other computers turn it into PDF, it replaces it with the default. So we'll send the district a PDF version with it formatted correctly. So like you don't have tables being split on different pages. So I do apologize for that. But this is basically a sample of our annual enforcement report that we'll be turning in later in the year. And I'll hand it over to Justin to discuss the components of this report.
Hi, so this is Justin Shields with Enforcement, and I just wanted to go over just very briefly what's in this report. So in this report, you're going to find the inspections of heavy-duty vehicles. So this is going to break down what we did in 2019, and if you continue down, it's going to show you the compliance rates of different programs, and there should also be a map of where these inspections were performed. And as you continue, this is going to go into SB1 stats. So these are the trucks that were non-compliant in 2019 and 2020 that were removed from the, that were put on registration holds. And it's going to have information about statewide consumer products, inspections, fuels, any complaints that we received in the community, the supplemental environmental projects, which should detail the SEPs that have been funded in the community. So you should see information on Fresno trees right there and the amount that has been funded so far. And like it says, it's ongoing funding from enforcement via the violations of violators. And then these are basically the strategy updates and the strategies that we committed to, our enforcement goal, which we're still committed to, kind of a yearly breakdown from, I think, 2016 to 2019 and the compliance rate and how it changes. And then the outreach and trainings that we've developed. And as you continue, there's going to be more information on these outreach, the things that we're doing to achieve these strategy updates. And then you're going to reach the appendix, which is going to give you information on the program descriptions, the inspection information. So when we did an inspection, where we did an inspection, the program that we inspected, and if a violation was issued or not. And you should find below that also the complaints appendix as well. And if you have any questions, I'll drop my email and number that you could reach me on in the chat. And if you have any questions or want to go through it with more time, you can always contact me.
Yeah, and Justin, if you want, maybe send a link in the chat to your enforcement tool. I think that's a really neat way to visualize enforcements, not only in Fresno, but how they stack up with the rest of the state.
You are correct there. Thank you. That's somewhere in there, but I will drop that link.
Oh, awesome. If there's a hyperlink in the report, that works as well. That's right.
Thank you, Justin, Brian, and Jamie. Oh, Jamie, did you have something else?
Nope.
No.
No, that was
okay, so we just, oh, hi, Lisa.
Yeah.
Question.
Since I got an early, a day early jump on everybody on this, as I'm reading it, I have 38 changes, font styles, questions, formatting issues with this document, and I'm only on page 17. My question is, who do I send my comments or concerns to?
Lisa, you can just, whenever you're ready, and we'll take them in sections or whatever. If you want to leave it, I can swing by and pick it up. If you're doing them by hand, whatever's best, just text me and we'll coordinate.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So it sounds like Jamie is willing to take everything, including carrier pigeon, to get your edits to this report. And she will take emails, she will take it by hand, and she will take it by phone, and even walk you through it in a private session if needed. There is time, and there is space, and there is capacity.
She wants to stop by my house for some chicken. She wants to stop by my house for some chicken pozole. Who is she?
Oh, okay. So this is not about service, it's about food. She is really wanting Lisa's cooking. That makes sense. That makes sense.
She'll pick it up for soup.
Just to answer Ivanka's question, because I think it's a good one, if we could have, we anticipate there will be several rounds of input. So, our goal is that we take kind of the first round of input, we incorporate it back in, we share it with you, we take a second round of input, we incorporate it back in, we share with you. If we could get the first round of input by the end of October 3rd, that would be helpful in letting us have a next draft for you at the next meeting.
Excellent.
But
okay.
Don't feel like that's your last opportunity to provide input.
Okay, so let me recap really quickly. The report is in draft form. It's not due for many weeks. The Air District will take your comments in whatever way you want to give them. They are going to submit additional drafts to CARB, but you've got plenty of time. It is not final and it is not there yet. But when you read this report, from what I'm hearing, it summarizes all the progress you've made as a committee over the last year. And so look at it with that lens and think about it with that lens and provide feedback to make sure it's reflecting some of the hard work and the coordination, I guess the sweat and the tears, right, that you all put into this. And then again, this is separate from the verbal report CARB's going to be giving next week to their board. So 2 different issues, 2 different reports, but CARB does have a written portion of this report that the Air District just shared, and that's what the CARB team was speaking about. So questions, this is your last chance since we're running very tight on time. Please type any questions in the chat or raise your hand at the last minute. And what I will ask you is that the Air District has offered to have hard copies mailed to anyone that wants to see this report in another way that's not electronic. So if you do want a printed copy, please write your name in the chat, and there are English and Spanish versions that can be mailed to anyone that requests it. And I see a hand from Nayamin. Nayamin, question?
Yes. So how do we know what will be the Air District's report next week at the CARB board meeting on the 24th?
That's the next agenda item. Can we move to that since we are close to our last 5 minutes? I'm going to run over by 2 minutes, guys, and I apologize for that, but I think we had a great conversation. Can I talk? I'm not sure if the CARB team's quite ready, but can I hear from, is it Brian that's going to talk about the CARB meeting? Yeah, Brian, you want to give that download?
So I'm going to start really quick. In the chat, I'm posting links to the September 24th board meeting agenda and ways to watch it really quick. I will also send this information to Heather at the district to distribute to anybody who's not on this call or who doesn't get our email updates. So we should hopefully cover everybody. There you go. So if you notice from these agendas, the meeting is starting at 12. But there are 2 agenda items before the AB 617 one. So one of those, actually the second one, is on our hotspots program that has to deal with toxics, which you may want to listen to if you have time, but the CARB item will not start before 4 p.m. So the idea is that even if the first 2 agenda items end early, we're going to stop the board meeting and wait till 4 p.m. to start the AB 617 implementation update item. It may start later if the first 2 run late, but as long as you get on by 4, you will not miss anything of it. The current format for those updates, as Ivanka mentioned, we're trying to meet the direction from our board and chapter. The board wanted to hear updates from CARB staff, district staff, and the steering committee. Excuse me, the steering committee. So what we're going to do is have that format. We're going to have a short CARB presentation, and then we're going to turn it over to district staff and community steering committee members. There will also be a long public comment period after the meeting. Since we are the last agenda item, we'll be able to take public comment from other steering committee members and general stakeholders in the Fresno area and other residents who aren't on the steering committee. So in a nutshell, that is the format as of now. I know some details haven't been totally worked out yet. And I don't know if Vernon or Karen want to add anything to my little brief rundown.
Good evening, everybody. This is Vernon Hughes with CARB. Brian, I think you covered everything pretty well there. So yeah, folks have questions. Certainly here to answer questions too.
Excellent. I don't see any questions. Laura, I do see your hand, but I want to ask a favor of you that we're going to take public comment in just a few seconds. So hold that thought, and I'm definitely going to come to you first in just a second. Any committee questions about this item related to CARB, or we're going to move into wrap up? Awesome. Okay. As always, and we're going to do this fast, as always, please remember that we definitely want to make sure your topics are covered in the agendas that we have for these meetings. So if you've got any topics you want the committee to consider, please type them into the chat and or send emails to the district to make sure that they include those in future meetings. I want to remind you all about the stipend program, which is up and running. We issued our first checks a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully those of you that signed up have received them in the mail. If not, reach out to us. The mail is a little slow these days, and so it's possible that it's still in transit, that you should have gotten them, and we'll be issuing our next checks in about 7 to 10 days for this meeting included and any others before that. You can sign up anytime. Even if you missed the original cutoff, we will still go retroactive through the beginning of this year. I'll stay on the line after this meeting and make sure that answer any additional questions you might have. Ivanka, thank you for being community co-host today. Anything you want to communicate to the committee before we wrap up? And then I'll also plug that anybody that wants to be a community co-host, please raise your hand or put your name in the chat, and we will add you to a roster for the future meeting. Ivanka, anything for the group?
No, just thank you, Erica, for keeping us on task so I can go feed my little orphan squirrel.
Oh, man.
Oh my God, that is amazing. I want one. Well, that is amazing. That's like the highlight of the meeting, Ivanka. That is the cutest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Is that
yes.
a squirrel?
Yeah, it's a little squirrel.
It's a squirrel.
Fell out of its nest, and the mama, I think, died already.
Oh.
So.
That's a baby squirrel. Oh my goodness.
Seriously, cutest thing I've seen in a long time.
Thanks, Ivanka. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So wait, we still have public comments. So Laura, please give us our first public comment. Laura, are you there? Oh, we might have lost Laura, unfortunately.
Yes, more of the dust will fall by the sides of the sidewalks where the bicyclists to put trees on the side of the road, and when the wind blows the other way, the dust comes out of the trees or the bottoms of the trees or the grass under the trees. And therefore, we should have some of the grant money to providing masks for people that bicycle to work, or just people that don't have any other transportation except for a bicycle.
Thank you for that comment, Laura. That's an important point, and it is noted in this record. And if we can address it in a future meeting, we absolutely will. Thank you for that. Heather, would you mind checking Facebook for any other public comments? And anyone else on the line in Zoom today, please raise your hand.
I have checked, thank you, and we are okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're at the end of the meeting. I'm sorry, we're 4 minutes over. Next meeting, October 14th. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great meeting. You guys did so much work today. Much appreciated. Have a fantastic rest of your night. Feed that squirrel, Ivanka. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'll stay on the line if you guys have stipend questions.
Bye.
Yes.